For sinister Uber encounters, terrifying true stories revealed from haunted rides and cursed drivers. Lily had just stepped off a long shift at the coffee shop when she hit the button for an Uber. It was the kind of night that felt like the world had turned against her. The wind was sharp, the air thick with an unsettling chill. Little did she know that this ride would plunge her into a nightmare, fraying the edges of her sanity. As she climbed into the back seat, the driver turned, his face obscured in shadow. A familiar chill danced along her spine, but she dismissed it. They exchanged pleasantries, but his smile felt like a whisper of something darker. He knew too much about her, or maybe it was the way he stared at the rearview, as if calculating her every move. Despite the tightness in her chest, she shrugged it off, convincing herself she was imagining things. The quiet suburb felt like home, yet somewhere in the back of her mind, dread simmered. As they drove through the darkened streets, the driver asked her about her kids, her job, her interests, details plucked straight from her social media. The air thickened, stifling her with questions. How could he know? Panic surged, but she swallowed it. Surely, it was just paranoia, she thought as she forced a laugh. The trees loomed like sentinels, their branches scratching at windows as they passed. The once comforting familiarity of her neighborhood morphed into a suffocating grip. Suddenly, they rolled by an abandoned lot, and for a fleeting second, Lily glimpsed a figure lurking in the shadows. A chill cascaded down her spine, causing her heart to race. It was too still, too quiet, and the feeling of being watched prickled at her skin. "Can you just drop me off here?" she blurted, fighting the swell of terror that threatened to bubble over. Before she could build her resolve, the driver's grip tightening on the wheel twisted her stomach into knots. There was something predatory in the way he leaned forward, and for just a moment, his eyes glinted with something akin to hunger. She could feel her breath quickening, and a primal instinct flared within her. "I don't like this," she murmured under her breath. Before we continue, the voice in her mind screamed to escape, "I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube's been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue." They sped past the figure, but fear settled like ice in her veins. As the driver's voice droned on, a forgotten place of horror loomed ahead, an old hospital on the edge of town she had always avoided. The slipstream of night returned, a passel of memories, whispers of tragic tales sprawled out across the decades. She needed to escape, needed to know, and yet she felt trapped in a web far larger than her. That night, as dread crept into her heart, Lily realized her fight for survival was only beginning. The true horror awaited her, lurking just beyond sight, hidden beneath the everyday life of her quiet suburb. What other secrets were buried in the shadows? And as the darkness surrounded her, a chilling premonition closed in. Would she become the next lost soul wandering those haunted halls? The car slowed. Lily's heart thundered against her ribs, and she felt heat creeping up her neck. They were inching closer to the hospital, that cursed place. The driver's voice turned low and smooth, chilling her to the core. "You know, they say the souls of the lost never leave." His words slithered through the air, wrapping around her throat until she gasped. "Can you just let me out here? Please?" He didn't respond. The darkness outside enveloped them as if the night itself was a hungry beast waiting to swallow her whole. The windows felt like the eyes of shadows, observing, judging. The driver glanced at her in the rearview mirror, his smile wide, teeth unnaturally white against his gaunt face. "But we're almost there. You wouldn't want to miss it." Panic clawed at her insides. "No, seriously." Suddenly the car jerked to a halt. With the headlights piercing the inky gloom, they illuminated the hospital's cracked facade. The ancient bricks seemed to shudder under the weight of untold horrors. Windows were shattered, others stood as hollowed eyes, black and uninviting. It was a prison of memories, a graveyard of dreams turned nightmare. The man in front of her took a breath like a predator savoring the moment before the kill. "This is where your story begins, let me out," she screamed, her voice cutting through the oppressive air. But instead of complying, he leaned back in his seat, the hunger in his eyes morphing into something more sinister. "You're in it now. The stories never really end here." Desperately, she grabbed the handle, yanking it with a strength she didn't know she had. The door didn't budge, locked like the secrets of the dead. "This isn't funny." Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed movement, a shadow gliding past the cracked glass of a nearby window. She turned sharply, heart racing. What was that? The driver followed her gaze, his expression almost amused. "Screams echo through these halls, my dear. You're never truly alone." A heavy silence fell. The only sounds were the shifting of her panicked breaths and the distant moans of the wind. It wasn't just the hospital she feared, it was what lurked around her, and his cold, unnerving calm was testing her sanity. "Look closely," he said, gesturing with a casual ease as if pointing out an enticing view. "Some of those who enter never return." Lily's breath hitched. "You're crazy." She spat, but doubt knotted in her stomach. "Am I? Or is it you who will become part of the story tonight?" Just then, an unnatural chill flowed through the car. She felt it sweep past her, an icy wind that wrapped around her like a vice. She could have sworn she saw shadows flickering behind the hospital's glass. "I need to get out." But as she screamed, the driver leaned closer, his breath cold as frost upon her face. "You'll see them soon enough." He twisted the key in the ignition, and the engine growled to life, echoing like a ghostly wail through the desolate night. "No, stop!" she screamed, adrenaline flooding her system. But he smiled wider, and in that moment, she glimpsed what lay beneath that facade, a thin veneer of madness. Would she need to face to escape? To survive? Lily felt the car lurch forward, darting toward the ominous building. She wasn't just getting closer to the hospital, she was speeding into a nightmare on the brink of awakening. What was lurking in the shadows, waiting to claim her? The dread mounted, pooling heavily in her stomach as she clenched the seat desperately. And as they approached the entrance, the realization hit her: some doors, once opened, could never close again. "Where are you taking me?" she demanded, but beneath her words lay a tremor of deep-seated fear. The driver chuckled, a low, bone-chilling sound. "To the heart of the darkness, my dear, where stories of the lost come to life." And with that, they drove into the night, deeper into the embrace of terror waiting just ahead. What awaited her inside those walls? Her heart raced, not just with terror but an inexplicable pull toward whatever lay beyond the threshold. As the car edged closer, the imposing silhouette of the hospital loomed larger, its grotesque architecture stretching into the darkness like fingers reaching for the sky. Lily's palms turned clammy against the leather seat, and a bead of sweat trickled down her temple. She could barely comprehend the driver's cruel smile, an expression that seemed carved into his face as if the night had molded him from its own shroud of malice. "Just stop the car," she pleaded, desperation bubbling to the surface, her voice cracking. The driver twisted the steering wheel hard, flipping onto the gravel of the hospital's parking lot, tires crunching against the stones like teeth against bone. The headlights flickered and shined on the front entrance, a massive double door framed by ivy that clawed its way up the stone walls, as if trying to escape. "Time to meet your fate," he said, his voice dripping with glee. Lily's heart sank, but adrenaline kicked in. She balled her fists, ready to fight if he dared take another step toward her. But he did not. Instead, he leaned back in the seat, watching her with that predatory gaze, as if savoring her fear like a fine wine. The harsh clang of metal sounded as the driver's door creaked open, and with it came a gust of cold air that sliced through the car like a knife. In that moment, dread turned to ice in her veins. She couldn't stay in this car any longer. With one decisive movement, she flung the passenger door open and bolted, scrambling from the vehicle as if it were on fire. The gravel crunched beneath her shoes, sharp and painfully loud against the chill of the night. She didn't look back. Fear propelled her forward, a primal instinct urging her to escape the darkness itself, but the hospital was a vast black mouth, waiting to swallow her whole. Uneasy whispers flickered through the air, drifting from somewhere deep within its bowels. Shadows danced in her peripheral vision, darting just out of focus. "Help me! Someone!" She shouted, but the only response was the echo of her cries. As she pushed through the entrance, the doors swung open with an eerie creak, almost as if inviting her in. The hallway inside stretched infinitely, dimly lit by failing fluorescent lights that hummed ominously overhead. The scent of decay hung thick in the air, like the memories of lives once lived. Then she heard a soft shuffling sound, distant yet unmistakable. It was a shuffle that felt too deliberate to belong to any living person. She cautiously ventured deeper, her breath catching in her throat as she passed room after room, each one filled with silence so heavy, it nearly pressed down on her. Lily felt as though eyes were upon her, judging every movement, every moment of hesitation. She stopped to face a door marked "Patient's Records." A whisper brushed past her ear, chilling her. "Come play." The words sent tremors racing through her. She thought of turning back, but something compelled her. Was it curiosity? Or was it the relentless pull of whatever wicked thing anticipated her within these walls? She reached for the knob, trembling fingers debating whether to twist it. "Don't." The voice came from behind her, low yet sharp, cutting through the stillness like glass breaking. She spun around, finding herself face to face with a figure obscured by shadows. Who was it? Was it another lost soul? Or something worse? A scream tangled in her throat, but no sound came out, just a low whimper. As the figure stepped closer, the fluorescent lights flickered above, the air growing thicker. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, but she stood rooted. "Your story begins now." Suddenly, the whole world seemed to shift. The shadows expanded and swirled around her, and as her vision blurred, she felt herself being pulled into the darkness, lost in the abyss of the hospital's secrets. What awaited her in the grip of that darkness? Would she find escape or become just another fragment of the horror that dwelled within? Lily was weightless as she plunged into the darkness. Time blurred, her mind raced, grasping at fading images and voices echoing around her. She felt like she was falling through murky waters, straining to break the surface. But there was no surface to reach, only a suffocating void. Then, abruptly, she landed on hard, cold concrete. The impact jolted her senses back to life. Panic surged as she pushed herself up, gasping for air. The room was dim, the only light filtering in from a single flickering bulb overhead, revealing the mottled walls speckled with stains that could only be blood. Heart pounding, she forced herself to stand, every muscle screaming at her to run. But where? The overwhelming stench of disinfectant mixed with something far worse filled her lungs, and her stomach churned. The atmosphere was thick with a sense of wrongness, the kind of dread that wrapped around her like an unshakable coat. Shadows loomed on the edges of her vision, shifting and swaying as if alive. "Help!" She called out, her voice cracking, but only silence responded. The whispers resumed, creeping through her ears like tendrils of ice. "Look for them," came the faintest of murmurs, sinister and sweet, wrapping around her heart. Turning slowly, she saw a long hallway stretching to her left. It seemed to beckon her, gnawing at her curiosity and driving a stake of fear into her heart. She took hesitant steps, the soles of her shoes slapping against the cold surface. The whispers grew louder, coiling around her, teasing her with half-formed phrases that sent shivers racing down her spine. "Turn back!" Lily's breath hitched. Was it a warning? Or some twisted invitation? She stopped at a door marked with a single word, treatment. The handle felt cold, strange in her palm. With every heartbeat echoing in her ears, she turned the knob and creaked the door open. Inside was a small room heavily adorned with rusting medical equipment, needles, vials, and old surgical tools lay scattered. On an examination table lay a body, covered by a thin, peeling sheet that barely concealed what lay beneath. Panic bubbled up as she approached. What if it was a person? But with a deep breath, curiosity clawed at her instincts. As she pulled back the sheet, an overpowering wave of nausea hit her. The figure beneath was not human anymore, it was a mask of flesh stretched over bones, a hollow shell. Its eyes were wide open, glassy, and lost to the void. A cracked mirror hung across from the table, and as she caught sight of her own reflection, horror filled her. Her eyes were hollow, her skin pale, stained with flecks of crimson that weren't there just moments ago. What was happening to her? Panic surged anew, and she stumbled back, colliding into a shelf piled high with grimy jars. They crashed to the floor, the sound echoing like a gunshot. The whispers turned into screams as shadowy figures erupted from the corners of the room, swirling with malice. They closed in on her, their faces indistinct but filled with a desperate longing. "Join us," they wailed. "Get away from me!" She shrieked, her hands flying up in defense. The darkness pressed on her, suffocating, gripping tighter with each desperate breath. She darted to the door she had entered, but it was gone. Just a bare wall where it had stood. Trapped in a nightmare, she turned to face the figures closing in, despair bubbling to the surface. Then from among the shadows, she recognized a face, an echo from her past, a friend lost years ago. "Help me," the apparition pleaded, its voice a chilling whisper flaring with hope that twisted into something dark. Lily's heart raced. Was it her imagination? Or could this entity offer an escape? "Stay with us," the shadows hissed, their voices harmonizing into a desperate symphony of torment, each plea wrenching at her sanity. As desperation threatened to overtake her, the side of her eye caught a faint glimmer. A flicker of light just beyond the darkness. Could it be her exit? Or yet another trap laid before her? The symbols of her past echoed in her mind, the promise of escape lurking just beyond reach. What would she choose? In that moment, everything hinged on the next step she took. Lily's instincts screamed at her to run. The figures shifted, their phantom bodies distorted in the dim light, swaying like reeds in a tempest. She felt their hunger, the desperation that clung to them. But the glimmer, the flicker of hope, pulsed with a warm lure that was hard to resist. With a deep breath, she surged forward, drawn to the light. "Come back!" one of the ghostly figures cried, and the sound gripped her like barbed wire. "You can't leave us!" The chorus of pleas faded as she pushed through the oppressive darkness, her heart racing, each beat echoing in her skull. As she reached the source of the light, it formed a doorway, revealing another corridor bathed in a soft luminescence. The walls here were lined with pale, ghostly faces, each etched with despair. They stared at her, eyes wide with a mix of fear and longing. She felt the weight of their gazes, a suffocating pressure that made her skin crawl. "Help us," they murmured, their voices brittle and haunting. Clenching her fists, she refused to succumb. "I can't," she replied, but doubt flickered within her. She quickened her pace down the corridor, pushing aside their haunting pleas, desperate to put distance between herself and the shadows. The hallway twisted and turned, her surroundings shifting like a dream. Each step felt heavy, each breath labored. The soft light flickered, shadows danced behind her, creeping closer again. She could hear them, whispers distorted and full of longing, growing louder. "Join us," they called. Fear surged through her as she stumbled into another room. This one was larger, filled with abandoned medical equipment, surgical tools scattered across a rusting table, the remnants of some twisted experiment. An overwhelming sense of dread washed over her. She felt trapped, her throat tightening as she spun around. And then she saw a door at the far end, just barely ajar. Hope quivered in her chest. She darted toward it, but a figure materialized before her, blocking the way. It was a man, his features obscured by a shadowy veil. His eyes glinted with something she couldn't name. "Don't," he warned, voice low and raspy. "You mustn't leave. The others will take you." Others? Lily's voice trembled as she fought to keep fear at bay. What do you mean? Please. The man stepped closer, his face momentarily illuminated by the light. His expression was a twisted mix of fear and desperation, reflecting back what she felt inside. They need you for something far worse than you can imagine. Her breath caught. What does that mean? They're trapped, he whispered. Like me. They've taken us all. You can't trust them. Her heart drummed wildly, a cacophony of doubt and fear. But I need to get out of here. She glanced at the door, so close yet still far away. Before she could decide, the shadowy forms surged forward, their hands reaching for her. Join us. They wailed with an intensity that rattled her bones. Panic slammed into her chest as their voices crescendoed into a terrifying symphony. Get back! She screamed, and in a burst of adrenaline, she surged past the man. She pushed the door, slamming it open only to find herself outside into a blinding daylight that burned her eyes, but it didn't feel right. The world was wrong, colors too vivid, shadows stretched too long. The echo of faint screams lingered, familiar yet out of place. She turned to the man, but he was gone, replaced by a distant figure standing at the end of the driveway. Lily. The name floated on the air, strange and dissonant. Come back, it beckoned. Cold dread prickled at her skin. Would the light lead her to safety or deeper into darkness? As she hesitated, the ground beneath her began to pulse, as if alive, pulling her back. What lay beyond the door behind her? The figure at the end of the driveway extended a hand, and with it came an unspeakable choice: face the returning darkness or trust the unknown. Lily's world spiraled into chaos once again. Would she take the step forward, or would she be pulled back into their world of shadows? Lily's feet felt glued to the ground, and dread twisted in her gut as she stared down the driveway. The figure beckoned her, their fingers curled like a spider's waiting for a fly. Lily. It seemed to know her. Knew her name. She took a shaky step back, her heart hammering louder than the fading cacophony behind her. The light from the house flickered, throbbing as if it had a pulse. She wanted to look back, to gauge the threat lurking behind, but the overhead sun cast hues across the landscape that felt artificially bright, almost mocking her fear. Shadows lurked at the edges of her vision, whispering promises of belonging and acceptance, pulling her attention like a tide. Get away! She shouted, as if the figure at the end of the driveway could sense her wavering courage. But the call didn't faze them. Instead, they stepped closer. The sunlight glinted off their features, revealing half a smile, half a grimace, and those eyes too large, too wet captured her in a hypnotic gaze. Mom and Dad are waiting for you, they said, sweetly. The words wrapped around her like a vine, tightening with every syllable. A memory stirred within her, a long-lost one of laughter and safety. But then it twisted into something vile, a knife that cut deep. Come back, Lily. Don't you miss them? No. She screamed, her voice cracking. Panic sloshed through her like a wave, relentless and fierce. With her throat constricting, she turned to flee, darting back toward the door she had just exited. The whispers surged behind her, flanking her like a flock of crows. Join us, help us, you can't escape. As her hand grasped the door handle, it felt cold, unnaturally so. The metal pulsed under her touch, as if alive. With a jolt of fear, she yanked it open, docking her foot inside, only to discover that the hallway hadn't changed. The faces still lined the walls, their mouths moving in silent screams. She was caught between two worlds. Behind her, the figure offered a cruel smile, while the corridor beckoned with its soft light, darkening with her uncertainty. She could feel the shadows from the hallway creeping closer, encircling her like a noose. Don't let them take you. The voice of the man echoed in her mind. You're stronger than they are. But doubt knotted in her chest. Am I? She whispered to herself, torn between the longing for those she had lost and the dreadful unknown. Each breath in the corridor felt stale, tinged with despair, while outside, the sun was a relentless reminder of freedom. Her pulse raced, ricocheting off her ribcage. She squeezed her eyes shut, the mocking laughter ringing louder. "Don't do it, Lily!" The man's warning flooded her senses. The energy in the corridor shifted, growing darker, heavier. She could almost see the tendrils of shadow reaching for her, yearning to pull her in. "Please, you can save us!" Echoed from walls, merging with the calls from outside. Lily stumbled back. She would rather face the light, whatever it was, than remain here, trapped with the lost souls clamoring for her essence. Gritting her teeth, she opened her eyes and steeled herself. She charged forward, barreling past the outstretched hands of the wailing shadows, determined to break free from their grasp, to embrace whatever awaited her outside. With one final push, she hurled herself through the doorway, collapsing into sunlight, but it wasn't over. The air shivered around her, and the ground trembled again, pulling at her ankles. "Help us, Lily!" Echoed from behind, chilling and relentless. She staggered back, the driveway stretching further than before, the figure now looming larger, eyes glowing with something monstrous, insatiable. Tremors shot through her, terror climbing to a crescendo. What had she unleashed by stepping into the light? The sun dimmed, shadows gathering ominously. She felt the cold grip of despair as the figure whispered, "You belong to us now." What lay ahead? Would she escape or be consumed by the darkness closing in on her? Lily's heart raced as the figure thickened in the dimming sunlight. She could feel its eyes boring into her, sinking into her skin like whispers of temptation. The driveway twisted in an unnatural way, stretching as if the earth itself were conspiring against her. Shadows danced along the ground, flickering in and out of existence, each one tugging at her fear and regret. "Help us!" The cries from behind her poured from the shadows like a black waterfall, an echo of despair that clawed at her mind. "Join us, you can bring us back." She staggered, grasping for balance as dread twisted her insides. No more. She wouldn't be another soul ensnared by this trap. With every ounce of resolve she could muster, she turned away from the hallowed whispers and sprinted toward the road. The ground beneath her feet felt uneven, as if alive, shifting with her frantic steps. Lily's mind raced. She could make it to the road. The hard pavement was just beyond the looming shadows. The memories of her parents propelled her forward, fragile but fierce, a flicker of hope amid the oppressive darkness. But the figure followed, a hounding presence, its laughter ringing hollow in the encroaching night. "You can't escape your destiny. You're meant to be with us." Each word coiled around her, heavy and suffocating. She sprinted harder, her lungs burning as she broke past the threshold of the driveway. The cold air sliced against her skin, sharp and bitter, reminding her that she was a live human fighting against something unnatural. For a brief moment, she felt the warmth of the sun cling to her back. That moment shattered when the air turned cold and thick, as if summoned by her fear. A rumbling beneath her feet sent tremors into her bones. The road ahead took on an unnatural curve, pulling back away from her desperate grasp. Panic erupted in her chest. Was this just another trick? Just as she reached the middle of the street, the ground beneath her crumbled, splintering into an endless void. "Lily!" A voice called out a desperate plea from the shadows just beyond the driveway. Lily spun around, coming face to face with the figure. It extended its grotesquely elongated fingers, reaching, always reaching. "You are meant to choose, Lily. Give in and you shall find peace." But in its eyes, she saw something else. A flicker of the desperate souls trapped within. It was both inviting and horrifying, a mirror of what could consume her. "No!" she gasped. Her legs felt like they were made of lead as she stumbled back, fear crystallizing into raw, electric adrenaline. Suddenly, a flash of memory cut through the haze, an image of her parents laughing, joyful and real. Their warmth washed over her, illuminating the darkness encircling her. In that moment, a thought emerged, a plan, a way out. Get away from them. She screamed, her voice shredding through the fog. The words were a barrier, pushing back against the souls and shadows, creating a rippling force that momentarily stunned the figure, but she wouldn't hold this courage forever. She had to act fast. With newfound energy, she dashed away from the driveway, sprinting toward the looming woods that edged the road. The trees stood like sentinels, tall and silent, offering a gateway into the unknown. Lily! The figure roared, the once sweet voice now dripping with menace, "You cannot hide from us forever." The woods swallowed her as she plunged into the underbrush, branches clawing at her skin, the sounds of the figure's pursuit fading behind her. But what awaited her inside the darkness of the trees? Relief or deeper horrors? The shadows began to close in, yet she pressed on, desperate for escape. But as she plunged deeper into the unknown, she felt the cold fingers of doubt cling to her heart. Did she make the right choice? As the night enveloped her, a shiver skated down her spine. The darkness whispered her name, and somewhere deep within, a realization grew. Was she truly running from them, or was she running towards something worse? She hesitated, caught between two worlds once more. What waited for her in the darkness ahead? And would the choice to run lead her to freedom or into the arms of the very fate she feared? The darkness thickened around Lily like a suffocating blanket. Silence gripped the woods, pressing in on her. She couldn't see more than a few feet ahead, with twisted branches reaching out like skeletal hands. Fear curled in her stomach, gnawing at her resolve. Every crack of a twig or rustle of leaves felt like a whisper from the depths, ready to drag her back to the figure. Once she caught her breath, she pressed on, her feet pounding against the underbrush. This must be the way out, she whispered to herself, trying to convince her wavering mind. Each step pulled her deeper, as the shadows continued to stretch and twist, reaching for her but never touching. But something else was waiting, lurking just beyond her vision. A low growl emanated from the depths of the forest, an animalistic sound that echoed unnervingly close. Her heart plunged into a void. What now? She murmured. Panic threatened to drown her once more, clawing at her throat. With each step, the air became heavier, thick with a creeping dread. Keep moving, keep moving. She hissed, urging herself to run faster. A low breeze swirled around her, carrying faint, disturbing voices. "Join us, Lily." They sang, a mocking chorus swirling and weaving into a frenzy. "No!" She gasped, grounding herself against a tree. Breathless and shaking, she pressed her back against the rough bark, its texture familiar and real amidst the surrounding shadows. The voices continued to lure her deeper, entwining her mind with every distorted echo. Ahead, something shifted, gray shapes lingering behind the trunks, weaving in and out of sight. They moved like shadows but emitted a different energy, an electric presence that tingled at the back of her neck. Each heartbeat was thunderous in her ears. "Don't look," Lily whispered harshly, forcing herself to turn away, but the urge to glance back was overwhelming. She had to fight it. As she willed herself ahead, a sudden deafening crack sounded. A branch above splintered, breaking away and falling just steps from her. She jumped, heart racing as she instinctively dashed in the opposite direction. This cannot be happening, she thought in terror, and then she saw it. A flicker of movement within the shadows, not distant but near, too near. The figure loomed gloaming and grotesque, morphing in the depths behind trees that warped and twisted like figures in a nightmare. "You think you can escape?" it called, the voice now unmistakably dark, a growl thickened with malice. "You're part of this now. You can't just run." Lily's breath hitched. Suddenly, she recognized those voices behind the figure, the tortured whispers of the souls it clung to. They said her name, each echo wrapping around her like a vice. "Lily, remember us!" Fury ignited inside her, a blazing fire. "No! I will not be claimed!" she screamed, her voice slicing through the darkness. In an act of defiance, she turned and ran, not away, but straight toward the figure, adrenaline pumping wildly. The others were lost, but by facing this creature, she could save herself. As she sprinted forward, the laughter of the shadows morphed into rage, snapping like vines around her. Foolish girl. This is not a choice, it's your end. The trees started to close around her, tightening their grip. Panic surged again, but with clarity. She remembered the warmth of her parents' laughter, their belief in her strength. Think, Lily. Think. With a final surge of energy, she hurled herself forward, crashing through the underbrush. Was there an exit, a light amid the suffocating dark? Or was she simply racing toward her doom? At that moment, an inexplicable glow flickered in the distance, cutting through the heavy shadows. Hope blossomed, yet a frigid dread chased her. As she propelled herself toward it, she thought, was the light salvation or yet another trap? What awaited her at the end of this dark stretch? As she sprinted, her heart hammered against her ribs, every instinct screaming for her to survive. Where was that light leading her? Had she truly escaped the darkness, or was it merely biding its time? Lily burst through a wall of brambles into an open space, her lungs gasping sharply for air. The glow ahead pulsed softly like a heartbeat. It was a stark contrast to the engulfing darkness of the woods, shimmering bright yet abysmal. Her heart raced, each beat echoing louder than the last. The thundering sound mingled with the faint growls behind her. Shadows still clung stubbornly, clawing at her heels. She took a staggering step forward, drawn to the light, a flicker of hope that seemed so fragile but so undeniable. Just a little closer, she whispered, her voice cracking. But the words shimmered in the air like fragile glass. With each step, something switched inside her. The echoes of the tortured souls urging her to join them fell silent, replaced by the terrifying realization that whatever was behind her was hunting her still. As she edged forward, the light grew brighter, revealing a weathered archway that seemed out of place. Ancient runes lined the stone, faintly glowing, almost alive. The ground within the archway was littered with tattered remnants of clothing, a chilling hint of what might lay beyond. Should I? She hesitated, biting her lip. But the growl had sharpened, filling the air with a grotesque promise of suffering. Then came the sound, a rustling. Not just from the trees, but from the archway, something shifting, lurking in the light. Lily stepped back, doubt gnawing at her. What if this was another trap? But the dark figures would not stop pursuing her. The figure she had seen before, with its engulfing malice, would catch her in darkness, and those echoes would join her senses in eternal torment. Without thinking, her legs propelled her through the archway. She felt an electric jolt as she stepped into the space beyond, the sensation traveling up her spine. Crashing into what felt like a wall of air, she stumbled into a wide stone corridor illuminated by eerie, flickering lamps. The air felt different here, hollow and vacant. It was devoid of the suffocating dread she had just fled. But just as her heart began to find a rhythm, a dreadful thought punctuated her mind. The chill creeping along her skin wasn't an escape, it was something else, an invitation. Echoes danced along the stone, whispering in a language she couldn't quite grasp. Welcome, Lily, it breathed, wrapping around her like a cold embrace. Shadows flickered at the edges of her vision. What do you want from me? She shouted into the silence, but the only response was laughter, dark and twisted. Panic surged, squeezing her chest tight. She stumbled deeper into the corridor, her feet slipping on the damp ground, but the whispers grew louder. They beckoned her, tantalizing promises twined with malice. Join us, they seemed to mock her, the edges of her fear splintering off into despair. Become one with the darkness. Realizing her mistake, she spun around, desperate to flee, but the exit was swallowed by shadows. The corridor extended endlessly behind her, and the oppressive weight of darkness grows heavier. What had she walked into? The dread bled into her very core. She hadn't escaped at all. She'd merely chosen a different kind of nightmare. Suddenly, a figure swept into view, merging from the shadows inside the corridor. Not the grotesque form from before, but something even more sinister, a twisted resemblance of someone she once knew, someone she thought was safe. Lily, come to me, it called, its voice a sickly sweet harmony, pulling at the thinnest threads of her sanity. Get away from me!" she screamed, realizing in horror who stood before her. Would she succumb to the beckoning voices, or could she find the strength to resist? What would it take to shatter the bond poised to ensnare her? The answer lingered just out of reach, waiting for the moment she could no longer endure the pull of darkness. Lily's heart raced in her chest like a caged animal, desperate for freedom. The dimly lit corridor felt alive, breathing around her, pulsing with an energy that both terrified and beckoned her closer. The figure before her twisted in shadows, an echo of the love she had lost, and yet it morphed into something grotesque, an abominable reunion she couldn't face. "Join me, Lily, we can be whole again," it crooned, voice sweet as honey yet thick with the vile taint of loss. Each malformed word crawled over her skin, urging her toward the abyss just beyond her grasp. "No!" she screamed, shaking her head, trying to banish the memories that threatened to swallow her whole. The warmth of her parents felt so close yet simultaneously so far, a bittersweet mixture of love and longing. Each heartbeat became a drum of warning, pounding against her ribs. "You're not them. You're just shadows." In a surge of defiance, she sprinted past the twisted figure, her feet pounding on the damp floor. Her breath came in desperate gasps, but the whispers of the corridor reached out like icy fingers, prickling against her spine. Shadows swirled around her, thicker than smoke, but each step grounded her kept her real. "Don't run from me!" The voice howled, reverberating through the corridor, filled with rage and envy, echoing her worthlessness back to her. She stumbled into a narrow passageway, the walls closing in like a predatory embrace. A flicker of dim light danced at the end. It propelled her forward, igniting courage like a flame in her heart. If she could just reach that light, maybe she could escape. Maybe there was hope, but the shadows lashed out, tugging at her with frantic whispers. "You cannot hide, you belong to us, forever." The weight of their disdain clung to her, a reminder that she was merely a specter to them. "No!" she whispered fiercely to herself. "I am not yours." With renewed strength, she surged onward, fighting to break the invisible bonds that clawed at her sanity. The light grew brighter, illuminating the hallway with an almost celestial glow. Suddenly, she burst through an archway into a vast room, a cathedral aglow with ethereal light. The air was heavy with the scent of something warm and familiar home. Memories washed over her, but they weren't lost, she held them close. In the center of the chamber stood a marble pedestal, a mirror glinting atop it, catching her reflection. She approached slowly, transfixed. It pulsed with life, and just beyond, she thought she could glimpse the silhouettes of her parents lingering, smiles welcoming yet faint. Was this the exit or another trap? "Look!" The whispers hissed, dancing around her, trying to draw her attention to the malevolence swirling in the dark edges of her mind. "You'll join with us. You can't resist forever." "No!" she shouted, shaking her head violently. The connection she felt to those shadows was not power but despair. "You're wrong. I am not afraid of you. I want to surrender." As if fueled by her resolve, the mirror shimmered, revealing glimpses of a future unfurling like new petals. Her parents waved, beckoning her toward them, their eyes filled with love, understanding. "You must choose, Lily," their voices blended, carried through time and space. With trembling fingers, she reached toward the glass surface. "Return to us," the figure in the shadows hissed, but she wouldn't turn from the light. "Not like this!" she screamed, plunging her hand into the mirror. The cold surface engulfed her, and in an instant, she was surrounded by warmth, the clutches of darkness shattering like glass around her. The light enveloped her, and suddenly she found herself back outside in the sunlit world, on the street that had once felt so ominous. The shadows retreated, shrieking in fury as the brightness chased them away. Gasping, she fell to her knees, sunlight pouring over her like a life-giving shower, hot and vibrant. Lily took a moment to breathe, heart thrumming with a mix of anxiety and relief. She felt the weight lift, releasing her from the grip of despair, a painful reminder of what she had escaped. But deep down, she knew she had faced her darkest fears and come out alive. "Mom, Dad," she whispered, a soft prayer. Their love would guide her, always protecting her spirit. As she stood up, wiping her tears away, the sun shone brighter, chasing away the remaining shadows lingering in her heart. She took a deep breath, filled with hope, ready to start anew, now aware that the light was not fearsome but a refuge, and as she walked away into a new day, she felt the whispers fade, nothing more than a memory and a reminder of how strong she had become. So, the real journey was not about escaping the darkness, but embracing the light within her, one she could carry wherever she went. Thank you for sharing this wild ride with Lily. It's time for you to take action. You need to subscribe now to catch the next exclusive tales of fear and adventure that only we can tell. Don't wait even one more second, they're waiting for you. Smash that like button to feed the algorithm and show your love for the story. And flood the comments with your thoughts and theories. What did you think of Lily's harrowing escape? Finally, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to feel that adrenaline rush. Be their guiding light.